A very good morning, all of you. Welcome to day 3 of our 7-day challenge. So, this 5 a.m. club will start with meditation and then move on to an interesting topic. A positive news, of course, a positive news which is relevant to the current pandemic. Convalescent plasma therapy. Even though it has limited applications in treating COVID patients, let's look into the science behind it and also some results based on limited studies which we have, including the ICMR's advisory or suggestion on when to go ahead with convalescent plasma therapy or passive immunization, right? I hope you guys are all ready. So before we go ahead with our positive news, let's meditate for around 10 to 15 minutes. Third day, we started with 5 minutes. Yesterday, it was around 10 minutes. Today, we'll see if we can uh, go ahead with 15 minutes, right? So I'll play some music. Also, we'll have some uh, beautiful picture presentation, and then we'll go ahead with our meditation initially. By the way, the right answer to that question is why did Harita mention it as 6? Try finding out. Okay, Harita must be experienced in answering such queries. By the way, 3 or 6. I'm glad you're all awake. Those who are attending this live session. Let's proceed. So, as I said, day 3. So, we're keeping a track on number of days as well. So, today is day 3 of our 7-day challenge. Let's go ahead with our meditation. So, all you need to do is just focus on your breathing, inhalation and exhalation, and correlate inhalation with positivity. When you're inhaling, imagine, visualize that you're taking in all the positive energy. It can be in any form. And while you're exhaling, just visualize that you're emitting all the negativity, if at all, in you, right? So simultaneously, you can observe the picture or you can close your eyes as per your convenience. I would suggest you to sit down, and of course, you can rest your back if you want. Let's start. So I'll put a timer for around 15 minutes. Let's go ahead with this form of meditation. And even if there are thoughts running across your mind, that's absolutely fine. Do not restrict them. Neither restrict them nor entertain them. slowly and gradually try opening your eyes if you have closed them. So it's almost 15 minutes. Isn't that wonderful and smooth? Right. So now let's move on to the next segment of this 5 a.m. club, where, as I said, I hope you're all awake, where, as I said, we'll go ahead with literature review related to convalescent plasma therapy or passive immunization. So let's go ahead. So we'll be reviewing some articles, former indexed articles, and also the ICMR guidelines which are available in the official website in regard to the use of this convalescent plasma therapy. So here we go. Yeah, first and foremost, let's look into some literature, right? What's this convalescent plasma therapy is all about? So first and foremost, as you can see, there are, of course, several treatment options available. When we say several, it's comparatively limited because we are in the context of COVID-19, since we are still in the process of understanding the pathology and we're coming up with new possible solutions. So with few treatment options available to manage COVID-19, the disease presents a unique set of challenges for healthcare providers globally. In addition to using non-drug interventions, health systems have devised strategies to manage COVID-19 using repurposed drugs, revisiting old strategies such as convalescent plasma. First of all, convalescent plasma, what does convalescent mean? Convalescent means recovering. So what you do is you take out plasma from a person who has recovered from COVID. There are certain indications. And also, like who should be the donor when it is indicated. We'll go into more of those details a bit later. So convalescence means recovering. So convalescent plasma therapy is where you're trying to obtain plasma from a person who is recovering after being infected with COVID. Seems ironic, right? But the rationale behind this is we're trying to get the antibodies which are available in that recovering patient and trying to use it to a person who has been infected with COVID, right? So in the past, convalescent plasma, it's not a new technique. We have numerous examples which we'll discuss in the process. So in the past, convalescent plasma was used as passive immunization strategy to treat viral diseases, raising expectations that potentially it could be used to treat such as SARS-CoV-2, the virus responsible for COVID-19 and a disease with no proven effective interventions. Research is still going on. So convalescent plasma is a source of antiviral neutralizing antibodies. That's the reason why we're using it. Other immune pathways such as antibody-dependent cellular cytotoxicity, complement activation, or phagocytosis are putative mechanisms through which convalescent plasma might exert its therapeutic effect in COVID patients. Because we're taking antibodies, so we can obviously expect these other mechanisms of action as well, including phagocytosis. Additionally, anti-inflammatory cytokines, defensins, pentraxins, and other immunomodulatory proteins might have a role in alleviating systemic inflammatory response syndrome, the main pathophysiological basis for acute respiratory distress syndrome and mortality from COVID-19 related pneumonia. You can underline this point or you can even make a note of it as per your convenience. Systemic inflammatory response syndrome. So in the pre-vaccine era, convalescent plasma was used to treat diseases such as poliomyelitis, measles, mumps, influenza, including the recent viruses like Ebola virus disease and severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus epidemics with varying degrees of success. Evidence suggests that convalescent plasma collected from survivors of COVID-19 contains receptor binding specific antibodies with potent antiviral activity. However, effective titers of antiviral neutralizing antibodies, optimal timing for convalescent plasma treatment, optimal timing for plasma donation, and severity class of patients who are likely to benefit from convalescent plasma remains unclear, largely because of the limited studies we have. Since it's a very new infection which we have come across, studies are still going on. But having said that, we have certain specific guidelines laid out in India by ICMR. In fact, they've done one of the largest studies in the world, placid trials, I reckon. We'll get back to that. So we'll end this particular article with this particular text. It has something to do with the studies. So just for sake of our idea, since the publication of first case series from China, multiple observational studies have been published, some on preprint servers reporting the association between convalescent plasma, reduced mortality, hospital stay, viral load in patients with COVID-19, etc. Only two randomized controlled trials on convalescent plasma use in COVID-19 have been published, one from China, the other from Dutch or Netherlands. Both were stopped prematurely because of certain specific reasons. Meanwhile, convalescent plasma treatment has received regulatory approval for use in patients in several countries, including India. This has resulted in its widespread adoption in real-world clinical practice, where it's being used to treat patients with a wide spectrum of COVID-19 severity. Given these uncertainties, we determine the effectiveness and safety, and they have presented some studies. They presented some results in regard to this. I reckon we can go directly to that specific part. Yeah. We can just go to the conclusion part of this article. Although the use of convalescent plasma seemed to improve resolution of shortness of breath and fatigue in patients with moderate COVID-19, in this particular study, they have taken up moderate COVID-19 patients and led to higher negative conversion of SARS-CoV-2 RNA on day 7 post-enrollment. This did not translate into reduction in 28-day mortality or progression to severe disease. So what does it mean? So this is something which gives a summary of this entire study. So as of October 2022, last year, multiple small case series, one large observational study, etc. There are some studies which have suggested the use of this convalescent plasma to treat coronavirus disease. Although observational studies suggested clinical benefits in recipients of convalescent plasma, the trials were stopped early and failed to ascertain any mortality benefit from convalescent plasma treatment in patients with COVID-19. And what this specific study has added is, in settings with limited lab capacity, convalescent plasma does not reduce 28 mortality or progression to severe disease in patients admitted to hospital with moderate COVID-19, which is a significant finding, even though it's not positive. It's a significant finding, and convalescent plasma treatment was associated with early resolution of shortness of breath and fatigue, and higher negative conversion of SARS-CoV-2 RNA on 7th day of enrollment, which is definitely a positive news. And as a potential treatment for a patient with moderate COVID-19, convalescent plasma showed limited effectiveness. So this is some data which we have. And then let's move on to the next article, where we'll try to review the history of this convalescent plasma therapy in brief, and then we'll move on to ICMR guidelines. Okay, so the rationale of convalescent plasma as treatment option. So why are we using it? By now, I'm sure you must have had some idea. We're trying to use passive immunization methods, or the antibodies which are generated from a patient in order to treat active infected cases. So to manage infection of certain diseases, the patient may be prescribed antibodies against specific antigen. The immune system and antibodies respond to any infectious ailments, either due to infective pathogenic microbes or due to response towards a specific vaccine against particular infectious disorders. The production of antibodies requires time, and the time necessary for immune system depends on individual patients or the recipient immune system. Therefore, antibodies recovered from similar patients or artificially generated in animals like rabbits, horse, which we're all familiar with, are considered one way to offer instant immunity among susceptible cases for a brief period. This therapeutic concept has a long-standing history. In fact, you'll come across some interesting information now. It was practiced as far back as late 19th century as whole blood or plasma administration among patients vulnerable to microbial infectious diseases. The German physiologist, the first Nobel laureate in medicine and the father of serum therapy, Behring, 1854 to 1917, won the prestigious prize in 1901 for his discovery of serum therapy for treatment of diphtheria. Additionally, Behring and Japanese physician and bacteriologist Kitasato revealed tetanus immunity treatment strategy utilizing rabbit's serum. So the fundamental physiopharmacological concept comprising passive immunization have added efficacy when used prophylactically than for curative purpose of infectious disease. Moreover, if the antibodies are administered as curative therapy, these need to be given as early as possible when the symptoms and signs develop of particular infectious disease to maximize efficacy of the antibody action and to obtain desired treatment outcomes. Consider this final statement very important because based on this, we have certain guidelines in the ICMR suggestion box as well. So this timing has not been clearly determined. It may be possible that the amount of antigens are much higher than antibodies when the disease process turns to a full-blown severe disease, reducing the effect. So once the disease sets in, right, even if you give these antibodies, it might not be suffice to overcome the viral antigen load, right? So that's the reason why the point is we need to give this plasma in an early period of infection phase, right? Another study revealed that antibodies work through inhibiting inflammatory process, and this inhibitory effect is principally achieved when the infectious disease process is at beginning stage or the patient is still asymptomatic. So we have so many suggestions and data given here. Let's try to simplify it in the form of ICMR guidelines, which are mentioned here. Yes, so ICMR guidelines, you can see evidence-based advisory to address inappropriate use of convalescent plasma in COVID-19 patients given last year, November 17th. So before we go into this data, right, just look at the potential donor and potential recipient indications or decision matrix, right? So we'll get back to this again. Before that, CPT or convalescent plasma therapy or passive immunization has been tried in the past for treatment of viral infections, as we have just seen, like H1N1, Ebola, SARS-CoV-1, but COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2. Benefits of CPT in improving the clinical outcomes, reducing severity of disease, duration of hospitalization, and mortality in COVID-19 patients are dependent on the concentration of specific antibodies, IgG titers, in convalescent plasma that could neutralize the effects of SARS-CoV-2. So ICMR conducted an open-label phase 2 multi-center randomized controlled trial across 39 public-private hospitals on use of convalescent plasma in management of moderate COVID-19 in adults in India, which is PLACID trial, as I mentioned previously. It was concluded that CPT did not lead to reduction in progression to severe COVID-19 or all-cause mortality in the group that received CPT as compared to the group that did not receive CPT. PLACID is the world's largest pragmatic trial on CPT, conducted in 464 moderately ill lab-confirmed COVID-19 affected individuals in real-world setting wherein no benefit of use of CPT could be established. So this PLACID trial is related to convalescent plasma therapy. You can make a note of it. Similar studies conducted in China and Netherlands, which we have seen previously, have also documented no significant benefit of CPT in improving clinical outcomes of hospitalized COVID-19 patients. Having said that, doesn't mean that we should rule out the uses. There is no significant benefit, but there is some minimal benefit, which we'll see. It is speculated that convalescent plasma, having low concentration of specific antibody against SARS-CoV-2, may be less beneficial for treating COVID-19 patients as compared to plasma with high concentration of such antibodies. So we need plasma with high concentration of such antibodies, and that's the same which has been mentioned in the indications. As you can see, required concentrations. If you're going ahead with plasma therapy, we're trying to obtain plasma from a plasma donor. These are the indications. IgG antibody against COVID-19 titer of 1:640, ELISA, or you have other specific indications. So the point is, there has to be more antibodies. The titer has to be high in order for the patient to patient's immune system to fight against SARS-CoV-2, right? Now, indiscriminate use of CPD is not advisable. In fact, this various news outlets have picked up this, and there is latest information regarding the same, where doctors are advising the government to remove this CPD from the advisory. But anyway, CPD therefore should only be used as advised by ICMR NTF, National Task Force, for COVID-19 when specific criteria are specified below are met. So there are some specific indications. Let's see what they are. So this is the decision matrix overview. You can see who is the potential donor and who is the potential recipient, right? So potential donor, let me just zoom in. Who can donate? Men, women who have not been pregnant, never been pregnant, appropriate age 18 to 60. So there is wide range. So almost anyone can donate. Appropriate body weight more than 50. Diagnosis at the time of obtaining plasma from the patient, COVID-19 RT-PCR positive or a rapid antigen test positive. It has to be positive. And physical status after 14 days. I think this diagnosis is for the patient to make sure that he has been infected with COVID-19, not during the time of removing plasma, even though we'll get back to that a bit later. But the patient should have been infected with COVID-19. That's the point, right? So RT-PCR positive or rat test, rat positive is mandatory, right? And physical status after 2 weeks of symptom resolution. 2 weeks after symptom resolution. Testing negative for COVID-19 is not necessary. Even if the patient has tested positive, you can still obtain plasma, right? And the screening to rule out ABO incompatibility, blood-borne pathogens. The rest of the protocol has to be followed as usual, like any blood donation. And the required concentration of antibodies, IgG. So they're talking about neutralizing antibody titers, and then IgG antibody against COVID-19 titer, right? So these are some specifications. Now, what or who is a potential recipient? So this is very important, right? We're trying to save lives. So in the early stage of COVID-19 disease, early stage, so 3 to 7 days from onset of symptoms, but not later than 10 days, because by then the viral load obviously increases and the given plasma therapy might not be effective or efficient in handling or overcoming the pathogens. No IgG antibody against COVID-19. So the recipient should not have developed any IgG antibodies yet. And of course, informed consent, right? Even limited usages for convalescent plasma therapy, at least it has some role in alleviating the symptoms, right? As we have seen in some of the articles previously. And also we have another review article which is published by the PGI, Chandigarh, India. So we'll post all these links in the description part of the video, right? So these are the topics which I wanted to highlight in this specific videos. In the process, we'll come across plenty of information. I'm sure you highlighted or made a note of it, or you can do it even later as per your convenience. So convalescent plasma therapy. What is convalescent plasma therapy? How do you obtain it? When is it indicated? And what is the use of convalescent plasma therapy in COVID-19 patients? Unfortunately, rather we can say we're still in the process of learning more about this infection, and I'm sure as time progresses, as more studies are available, with better understanding, we can come up with even more efficient solutions. As of now, Vaccination is something which we're all very excited about and looking forward to. And in fact, that's going to end this pandemic, hopefully. So after after a few moments, we'll post a question in regard to this topic in the updates group Telegram. So try answering it, and I hope you enjoyed this session. And you can dig out more information about convalescent plasma therapy if you're interested. And also, the links to these reference articles will be posted in the description part of the video in 24 to 48 hours. Right? So appreciate your active participation. Let's keep this momentum going. I'll see you tonight at 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time, where we'll go ahead with our case-based discussions as usual. Right? Have a fantastic day. Love you all.